Greetings, everyone. Here are the main points of the video. The Green Fortress, once seen as unbreakable, has fallen, destroying the last illusion of a safe rear base. When the black smoke from massive depots covered the sky over President Putin's hometown, the lie about a distant war died, forcing Russia's middle class to face the harsh truth right in their own kitchens. This attack choked Russia's lifelines, causing them to shoot down their own Su-57 stealth fighter. Analyzing Kiev's impressive system warfare, where inexpensive Ukrainian UAVs repeatedly hit billion-dollar infrastructure, forcing Russian forces into panic and exhaustion, sometimes leading them to destroy their own top weapons. The winter ultimatum and the looming power deadlock at the Kremlin, 5 terrible choices and a disastrous winter are awaiting Russia. On the threshold of a harsh winter, Ukraine's campaign of striking at logistics has put the Kremlin in a difficult position, where every response leads either to exhaustion or to irreparable social instability. Welcome to the War Analysis Discussion Program. Before we get into the details, please take a few seconds to like the video and subscribe to the channel so we can continue. Thank you, dear viewers. A surprise attack on St. Petersburg hit 8 areas, forcing Russian air defenses to respond. They shot down a Su-57. Ladies and gentlemen, after weeks of casting a dark shadow over the skies of Moscow, the war has suddenly reached out to St. Petersburg, a fortress of architecture, culture, and one of the most closely guarded strategic rear bases. On the morning of July 24th, the city's massive logistics centers were engulfed in flames. Through the glass windows, Sanpetech employees were shocked, capturing every chaotic moment as thick black smoke rose, alarms blared, and explosions erupted in the fire. Among thousands of messages circulating online, only one overwhelming feeling remained: horror and helplessness. But Sanpetech was not the only flashpoint on that fateful night. From the Crimean Peninsula to Tver province, 4 massive national-level logistics facilities simultaneously suffered drone attacks by Ukraine in a precisely coordinated operation down to the second. This time, Kiev did not target traditional seaports or oil refineries. They struck a critical blow to the central nervous system that sustains modern Russian society. That is the network connecting millions of parcels and tens of thousands of trucks each week, stretching across 8 different regions and reaching as deep as 700 kilometers from the Ukrainian border. The burning of these super centers has shaken Russia's domestic logistics system to its core. While Russian local authorities have criticized these as terrorist attacks targeting civilian infrastructure, Ukraine has identified these very buildings as key military logistics centers. The answer to this controversial issue is hidden right on the online platforms of Whiteberries, on the burning shelves, and inside the cargo of the constantly moving trucks. On this platform, a wide range of specialized combat items have appeared, from bulletproof vests, tactical helmets, and gun sights, to night vision optical devices and drone signal amplifiers. Even more clearly, people have found bomb release mechanisms attached to Ukrainian UAVs, devices that serve no civilian purpose at all, along with fiber optic cables specifically advertised for FPV drones, tools that help these flying devices neutralize electronic warfare systems. In a country where people can order bomb-release devices for drones as easily as buying daily necessities, the claim of a purely civilian infrastructure becomes a very far-fetched argument. The clearest evidence actually comes from the users themselves, who are wearing military uniforms. In the product review section, Russian soldiers openly discuss the real combat effectiveness of the FV jamming devices for FPV drones that they have just purchased against threats on the battlefield. It's not just Ukraine accusing the Russian military of siphoning off resources and living off this online marketplace. The customers in uniform themselves have left undeniable evidence. That chain of evidence doesn't stop at the warehouses. It continues along the roads and even ends up inside the container trucks. Footage from Ukraine captures drone strikes on Russian military convoys behind the front line. For months, the front lines have repeatedly seen the appearance of trucks bearing the Wildberries brand. In particular, video footage along the Mariupol highway has sparked allegations that these truck convoys have blended into military supply corridors under the guise of civilian goods. Wildberries handles up to 20 million orders every day through a network of at least 20 major distribution centers. Along with its competitor Ozon, this system consistently transports a volume of goods equivalent to 8.5% of Russia's GDP and creates jobs for about 4 million workers. In just 1 week, Ukraine managed to take down more than a quarter of the operational capacity of that giant machine. Millions of people witnessed billions of dollars go up in flames, money that could have been used for the war effort. This calculation perfectly matches the campaign to strike oil refineries, targeting the bottleneck points. Russia owns tens of thousands of trucks, but there are only about 20 super coordination centers for all of them. Hitting one center will paralyze the routes, cargo, and schedules of thousands of vehicles at the same time. Right outside the gateway of a bridge, and logistics center covering 360,000 square meters, which alone handled up to 10% of the company's total cargo volume, was effectively flattened with just a single strike. With this single raid, the congestion immediately spread across the transportation arteries from the Baltic Sea all the way to Siberia. The transportation routes were extended by hundreds of kilometers overnight, and fuel and insurance costs skyrocketed. Delivery times were delayed across the board, all coinciding with the Zodiac Zen crisis that was strangling dozens of Russian territories. Seen from satellite images, the logistics center in Voronezh province tells the story without any narration. The roof has been torn apart. All the trucks have been evacuated from the parking lot, a silent testament that all operations here have come to a complete halt. This network is on the verge of a cascading collapse, with delivery wait times in Belarus already stretching to 6 days. And in the scenario where store shelves in Russia are becoming increasingly empty, the only party in the best position to jump in and fill that economic gap is none other than businesses from China. In just a single week, the first damage bill has already been sent, with a staggering figure, from 500 million to 1.3 billion US dollars. This is an unprecedented economic shock since the conflict broke out, compressed into just 7 days and nights. This storm of disruption doesn't simply halt consumer goods shipments, but it's directly strangling Russia's military machinery along the vast coastline. The fact that St. Petersburg, a city considered a center of power, was struck has brought a completely different dimension to the entire campaign. It is located more than 1,100 kilometers from the Ukrainian border. Putin's city, the birthplace of power, and also the Kremlin dynasty's window to the west, has always been considered an impregnable fortress throughout many years of war. Moscow has had to live with that harsh reality for many weeks now. And now St. Petersburg's fall has officially shattered the last illusion of an invulnerable rear area. But the strike's impact goes beyond the psychological aspect. St. Petersburg is the industrial and energy heart of Russia in the northwest region. On one side are vital Baltic oil ports like Primorsk, Ust-Luga, and Vysotsk, which are powerful money printers for the Kremlin and serve as anchorages for the Shadow Fleet. Across is the Admiral Shipyard, where strategic submarines are built, and the Kronstadt base, lifeline of the Baltic Fleet. These vital arteries have already been repeatedly attacked, from the ammunition depot explosion at Kronstadt to successive strikes on Ust-Luga and Primorsk. Now, as the civil logistics heart of this narrow geographic space is also set ablaze, Ukraine has simultaneously tightened all three arteries: military, energy, and commerce. The Wildberries truck network lies directly atop that strategic map. The company's northwest distribution corridor runs along the Moscow-St. Petersburg route, the busiest freight artery in Russia. These roads are closely intertwined with the truck traffic supplying seaports, shipyards, and the maritime supply route for the separated territory of Kaliningrad. Civilian logistics and military logistics in modern warfare have never been two separate worlds. They share the same highways, the same transshipment stations, and even the same pool of drivers. Right at the logistics complex that was burned down that morning, warehouses of many other businesses collapsed along with Wildberries. Every burden placed on this corridor will indirectly deal a heavy blow to the military arteries. A blockage that seems controllable at the moment can easily turn into a disaster. The cost of this new front is being charged to all levels of Russian society, from the lowest classes to the highest authorities. At the bottom, hundreds of thousands of independent sellers on this giant e-commerce platform have seen all their accumulated capital turn to dust on the burning, collapsing shelves. The word spreading among small business communities have starkly revealed the reality that thousands of small traders will wake up in the morning with nothing left and a pile of bankruptcy debt. The Russian e-commerce giants have essentially admitted that the attacks will continue and have collectively shifted all the risk onto the sellers. Even though Wildberries initially offered voluntary support to 88,000 small traders and settled it with debts, the only way out for larger partners is preferential loans, not compensation. A wave of outrage erupted on social media with cries for help as everything turned to dust. But when the first small compensation payments trickled back, hundreds of times lower than the actual losses, the outrage multiplied and began to shift, targeting not only the company, but also the authorities. Public opinion began to raise a bitter question. How could the warehouses of the largest corporation in a nuclear superpower be repeatedly attacked in 8 strategic regions in just 1 week? The situation worsened. Because of their methods, the small traders' goods were often split among various warehouses. This meant that a person's assets could be burned in 2, even 3 different cities in just a few days, a continuously bleeding wound that could not be stopped. The government responded by tightening control and banning the sharing of attack images, but Telegram had become an uncontrollable communication channel. An incident in Krasnodar perfectly captured that psychological crisis. A 9-year-old girl filmed a video in front of a burning warehouse, innocently saying, "How wonderful." Her mother lost her job and was forced to appear on camera to make a public apology, and the family faced a fine of up to 5,000 rubles. The nation's authority failed, strategic warehouses were lost, but all the blame went to a 9-year-old child. Even the Kremlin spokesperson, Dmitry Peskov, had to bitterly admit that the situation was truly difficult, without making any specific promises about the state taking responsibility for the losses. A series of warehouse fires not only destroyed infrastructure, but also eroded the loyalty of the oligarchs to the Kremlin. In that context, the message repeatedly delivered by President Volodymyr Zelensky is not a mere coincidence. The elites surrounding Putin are eager to end the war, and it is the Russian leader himself who is the only one prolonging it. This statement is a calculated psychological tactic designed to isolate the Russian leader in his own fortress. It deepens internal suspicions and sparks calculations about personnel reshuffles behind the velvet curtain. When drones strike assets, strategic statements directly target the mindset of those who control the assets, with both pincers tightening on a single objective. At the same time, the second pincer from the West also closed in as the European Union activated its 21st sanctions package. The blacklist continues to grow with 100 banks and cryptocurrency trading entities, 40 ships from the Shadow Fleet, 218 individuals and 50 entities belonging to the Russian defense industrial complex. The Russian elite is seeing their assets eroded from both sides. Inside, Ukrainian UAVs are burning warehouses. Outside, sanctions are freezing accounts, ships, and businesses. Looking through the Kremlin window, a harsh reality becomes clear. As long as the conflict continues, anyone who owns assets will have to bear losses. Kyiv is no longer wasting resources on single targets, but is instead aiming directly at the systems that sustain Russia's existence. Attacking oil refineries targets the fuel system. Chasing away oil tankers is strangling the Shadow Fleet. Targeting factories is crippling the defense industry. And Operation Wildberries is a direct blow to the distribution system that keeps everyday life going. On the morning of July 24th, along with the fires at logistics centers, Ukraine's Flamingo cruise missiles penetrated 1,200 kilometers deep into Russia, striking a sanctioned defense factory in Kirov, which produces key components for air defense missiles. A fact confirmed by Mr. Zelensky himself. That same week, an oil facility 1,300 kilometers from the border in Pashkotostan, along with 4 oil tankers in the Black Sea and the Sea of Azov, also came into the crosshairs. A clear military doctrine is taking shape, using UAVs for commercial warehouses, missiles for industrial production lines, and ship hunting campaigns for export routes. A facility in St. Petersburg, which had just been restored at a cost of billions after a major fire in 2024, was immediately disabled again. This disparity in speed renders all reconstruction efforts futile, simply adding a new target to the bombing list. Ukraine's goal has never been to knock out the opponent with a single blow, but to wear them down, make them bleed, and force them into making mistakes. Systemic warfare is won by the cumulative effect of every burned warehouse, every stretched supply line, every bankrupt merchant, and every anxious tycoon. The decline in confidence and the accumulation of costs over time will exhaust the system and lead to mistakes. A typical example of such a forced mistake just happened in the skies over the Moscow region. Russia's advanced stealth fighter, the Su-57, which has operated for about 6 years, was just shot down. Reports indicate that the culprit was none other than Russia's own air defense system. The air defense network, which had been on high alert for months due to continuous UAV attacks, fell into a state of panic. They couldn't tell friend from foe above their skies and accidentally shot down their own valuable equipment. Ukraine didn't even need to fire a single shot at that fighter jet. They just needed to put the enemy under such tremendous pressure that it ended up destroying itself. The cost asymmetry, where cheap UAVs can lock down billion-dollar infrastructures, is starting to rewrite the economic equation of the war in favor of Ukraine. Even though Russia has the ability to adapt, such as dispersing warehouses, shifting transportation schedules to nighttime, or strengthening defenses, every adjustment by Russia takes months, while Ukraine's waves of attacks are measured in weeks. Facing this new front, the Kremlin is left with only 5 options, and all of them are bad choices. The first option is to pull air defenses back to the interior to protect warehouses and logistics centers. This immediately creates new gaps on the front lines or at oil refineries. The second option is spreading logistics across many small warehouses. This will kill the optimization of Wildberries, increase costs, and lengthen delivery times, meaning Russia would be causing the systemic breakdown Ukraine wants. The third option is to escalate retaliation by launching a barrage of missiles and UAVs at Ukrainian cities. The fourth option, new military mobilization, is most dangerous when losses surpass the ability to compensate. But such an explosive decision is likely to be postponed until after the local and federal elections this fall to avoid social unrest. The fifth option is to enter negotiations. Mr. Zelensky has put his cards on the table by declaring that a solution is needed before winter or a serious escalation, and he is also ready to go to Washington for negotiations. But the negotiation table is not an easy way out for the Kremlin, as Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov still demands a halt to military aid to Ukraine and maintains a demand for control over 4 territories, turning negotiations into a demand for surrender. So, in your opinion, which option will Putin choose?